I am Reed. I am 27, just an average dude. I've made tons of money mistakes in my 20s, and now I want to share everything I've learned to help you take control of your finances and your life. All right, so I want to start off with something real. I remember sitting in my cramped little apartment a few years back, eating instant noodles for the third night in a week, staring at my credit card bill on my phone, and just feeling this total numbness in my chest. I was the 22nd of maybe 23 at the time. I had no savings, no plan, no clue what I was doing with my life. I just felt stuck. Like I was watching everyone else around me figure things out, and I was just standing still. And the worst part was, I started to believe that was just who I was. I actually thought some people are just built to succeed, and I was not one of them. That belief right there, that little quiet voice in the back of my head that kept telling me it is over for me, that I missed the boat, that I am not smart enough or disciplined enough, that almost destroyed me. And I know a lot of you feel that too, because I get messages from you guys every single day saying the same things. So let me tell you what I learned the hard way. That feeling of being stuck, it is not a life sentence. It is a program that got installed into your brain by your environment and your experiences. And if you understand how that program works, you can rewrite it. Now, the concept we need to talk about first is called learned helplessness. Psychologists discovered this back in the 60s and 70s. They did experiments with dogs where they gave them mild electric shocks that they couldn't escape no matter what they did. After a while, the dogs just gave up. They stopped trying to get away even when the researchers opened the door and showed them a way out. They just laid there and accepted the pain because their brains had learned that nothing they did mattered. Now, here is the scary part. That is exactly what happens to so many of us in our 20s. We try to get our finances together and we fail. We try to start a side hustle and we crash. We try to get in shape and we quit after 2 weeks. And after enough of these failures, our brain starts to believe that change is impossible, so we stop trying. We see a way out, but we don't take it because deep down we don't believe it is real. I was that dog for years. I honestly believed I was just bad with money. I thought some people are natural savers and some people are natural spenders, and I was just a spender. That was my identity, and identities are dangerous, man, because once you claim one, your brain will defend it like your life depends on it. Your brain will find evidence to prove that you are right about yourself. So if you believe you are bad with money, you will notice every time you overspend and ignore every time you save a dollar. And that belief just gets stronger and stronger over time. So how do you break out of this? First, you have to understand that your identity is not permanent. It is not something you were born with like your eye color. It is a collection of beliefs and habits that you picked up along the way. And anything that was learned can be unlearned, but here is the hard truth that nobody wants to tell you. Unlearning is painful. It is uncomfortable. It feels like losing a part of yourself. And that is why most people never do it. They stay stuck because staying stuck is familiar, and familiar feels safe even when it hurts. I want to share a personal story with you that I have never really talked about publicly before. When I was about 24, I had this moment where I realized I needed to change. I was working a job I hated, coming home exhausted every day, spending money on takeout and beer just to feel something, and then waking up the next morning feeling worse. It was this cycle that kept spinning and spinning. And one night I was lying in bed at like 2 a.m. scrolling through my phone, and I saw a video of this guy talking about compound interest, nothing crazy. He was just explaining how if you save $200 a month starting at 25, you could have like $1 million by the time you retire. And I remember doing the math in my head and thinking, okay, I can do that. I can save $200 a month. That is doable. And then immediately my brain started fighting back. It said, yeah, but you never stick to anything. You tried saving before and it didn't work. You don't make enough money. What is the point? And that voice almost won. I almost just rolled over and went to sleep. But something clicked that night. I realized that voice was not telling me the truth. That voice was just my learned helplessness talking. It was the old program trying to protect itself. And I realized that if I wanted to change my life, I had to stop listening to that voice. I had to ignore it and do the thing anyway. So I started small. I opened a separate savings account and set up an automatic transfer of $50 a week. That is it. $50 a week. It was not a huge amount, but it was a start. And I told myself I would not touch that money for any reason. And for the first few months, it was hard. I wanted to quit. I wanted to spend that money on things that felt good in the moment, but I kept going. And after about 6 months, something interesting happened. I started to see that account grow. It was not life-changing money yet. It was like $1,200 or something. But seeing that number go up changed something in my brain. I started to believe that maybe I could do this. Maybe I was not hopeless after all. And that belief is what changed everything. Now, I want to talk about something called the 9 stages of ego development. This is a framework from a researcher named Suzanne Cook-Greuter, and honestly, understanding this changed how I see myself and everyone around me. Basically, your ego, your sense of self develops through different stages as you grow up. Most people get stuck in what are called the conventional stages. That is like 75 to 80% of the population in these stages. You define yourself by your relationship to groups or by your skills or by your achievements. You follow the rules that society gave you without really questioning them. And that is fine for a lot of people. But if you are watching this video right now, you are probably not fine with being average. You want more. You want to break out of that mold. And to do that, you have to move into what are called the post-conventional stages. In these stages, you start questioning your own beliefs. You start seeing things from multiple perspectives. You start realizing that the map you were given by your parents and your school and your culture is not the territory. It is just one possible map out of many. And once you see that, you are free. But here's the thing. Moving up these stages takes time and it takes struggle. You can skip levels. You have to do the work. And the work is messy and painful and confusing, but there is one thing that research shows can accelerate this process significantly, and that is meditation. I know it sounds cliche, but just 15 minutes of mindfulness practice a day can literally rewire your brain to be more open to new perspectives. I started doing it every morning before I check my phone, just sitting in silence and watching my thoughts. And at first it was brutal. My mind was screaming at me the whole time, but over time I got better at noticing when my old patterns were showing up. I got better at catching myself before I fell into the same old traps. It is not a magic pill, but it is one of the most powerful tools I have ever found. Now let me tell you about the biggest mistake I see people making in their 20s. They consume information like crazy. They watch every YouTube video about personal finance and productivity. They read every book. They listen to every podcast, but they never actually apply anything. They mistake learning for doing, and that is a trap. Your brain gets a little hit of dopamine every time you learn something new because it feels like progress, but it is not progress. It is just entertainment disguised as self-improvement. I did this for years. I had a bookshelf full of finance books and self-help books, but my bank account was still empty. Why? Because I never did the work. I was just reading about the work. And that is a comfortable place to be because it feels productive without being risky. But real growth only happens when you take imperfect action. You have to make mistakes. You have to fail. And the earlier you learn to embrace failure, the faster you will grow. I want to give you a concrete example from my own life. When I decided I wanted to start making money online, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no skills, no audience, no clue. So I just started a blog. It was ugly and the content was terrible. Nobody read it for months. And I felt like a complete idiot. I wanted to quit so bad. But I kept writing, and slowly I started to learn what worked and what didn't. I learned how to write better headlines, I learned how to structure my posts, I learned which topics people actually cared about. Every single failure taught me something that no book or course ever could. And that is the point. Failure is the only teacher that is perfectly customized to your situation. It is the only feedback loop that actually tells you what is real and what is just theory. So stop being afraid of failure, start being afraid of not trying. Alright, so let me break down the strategy I actually used to turn my life around. I want to give you a simple framework that you can use starting today. First, you need strategic intent. You need a clear direction. Think about everything you hate about your current life. Your job, your body, your finances, your routine, write it all down. Then think about what you actually want instead. Do not just think vaguely, get specific. What does a good life look like for you? How much money do you need to feel secure? What kind of work do you want to do? What kind of person do you want to be? This is your North Star. It does not have to be perfect, but it has to exist. Without direction, your brain will just default to the path of least resistance, which is usually the path that leads to mediocrity. Second, you need to do a self-analysis. Be honest with yourself about your strengths and your weaknesses, and do not give me that I am not good at anything crap. That is your learned helplessness talking. Find something you are naturally decent at and lean into it. Also identify your weaknesses and be honest about how they are holding you back. Are you undisciplined? Do you lack a specific skill? Do you surround yourself with people who drag you down? Write it all down. You cannot fix what you refuse to see. Third, you need to change your environment. This is huge. You cannot expect to grow if you keep living in the same conditions that made you stuck. Start by cleaning up your digital life. Unfollow accounts that make you feel bad about yourself. Mute people who post toxic stuff. Start following people who are where you want to be. Then clean up your physical environment, your room, your desk, your habits. If you want to save money, stop going to places that make you spend money. If you want to get in shape, stop keeping junk food in your house. Make the right choice, the easy choice. Your willpower is limited, so do not rely on it. Design your environment to do the work for you. Fourth, you need to concentrate your force. Pick one goal and focus on it until you achieve it. Do not try to fix everything at once. That is a recipe for burnout. I tried to get rich, get fit, learn a language, and build a business all at the same time, and I crashed hard. Pick one thing, give it your full attention for 3 to 6 months. That is how real progress happens, and I am talking about a real project, not just a goal. A goal without a project is just a wish. Build something, start a newsletter, start a YouTube channel, start a small service business, something real that forces you to learn by doing. Fifth, you need disciplined execution. This is the boring part. Most people want to skip this step. They want the magic hack. There is no magic hack. You have to wake up every day and do the work even when you do not feel like it, especially when you do not feel like it. I spend the first 2 hours of every morning working on my most important task before I do anything else. No phone, no email, no distractions, just focus, deep work. And that one habit has changed everything for me. If you can only do one thing, start with that. Protect your mornings. They are the most powerful part of your day. Sixth, you need adaptability. Your strategy will not work perfectly from the start, and that is okay. You need to pay attention to feedback and adjust. If something is not working, try something else. Do not just keep banging your head against the same wall and wondering why it hurts. Failure is information. Use it. Every time you fail, you get a little bit smarter about what actually works. And seventh, you need to study the principles of reality. This sounds deep, but it is practical. Understand that everything is connected. Understand that your thoughts create your reality. Understand that discipline is freedom. Read philosophy. study, read about the great thinkers of history. The more you understand how the world actually works, the better decisions you will make. It is that simple. Now I want to end this with a technique that literally saved me from quitting 100 times. It is called the pre-mortem. Here is how it works. Before you start any big project, sit down and imagine that it failed completely. Imagine the worst case scenario: you ran out of money, you lost motivation, nobody cared about what you built. You ended up worse than where you started. Get really specific about that failure. Then write down every single reason why it could have happened. Every obstacle, every weakness, every external factor. Be brutally honest. And then for each cause of failure, brainstorm a solution before you even start. This does two things. One, it prepares your mind for the hard parts so you do not get blindsided. And two, it makes you realize that most of these obstacles are actually preventable. The fear of failure is usually worse than the failure itself. When you actually name your fears, they lose their power over you. So here's the bottom line. Your 20s are not easy. You are broke, you are confused, you are figuring things out, but you are not helpless. That is a lie. Your brain tells you to keep you safe. You can change. I changed. I went from being a guy with debt and no future to someone who actually has his life together, and I am not special. I am just some average dude who decided to stop listening to the voice in his head that told me I could not do it. And I started taking small steps every single day. And those steps added up. They will add up for you too if you just start. I know a lot of this was heavy, but I hope it helped. I did not make this video to blow smoke up your butt. I made it because I wish someone had sat me down when I was 21 and told me the truth about how my mind was working against me. So consider this your wake-up call. You have more control than you think. The game is in your head, and you can win it if you learn the rules. Peace.